All right, welcome along to the RT Soccer World Cup podcast. Raf Diallo here, and tonight I'm joined by Anthony Pyne of RT Sport Online and also Alan Cawley. We are watching the tail end of Argentina, Australia at the moment, about 15 minutes plus, with stoppage time now, that could be another half hour to go. It's 2-0 Argentina, so they're cruising into a quarter-final matchup against the Netherlands, who did play earlier and beating the USA 3-1. We'll talk about that very shortly. But before we do that, there is big news, Anthony. We already knew Damien Duff was big in Japan from his time at the O2 World Cup without bowing celebration. But you texted me earlier today to reveal that not only is Duffer big in Japan, but also now Didi Hamann as well.
Yeah, their analysis of the Japan win went viral in Japan. So when it goes, when something goes viral in Ireland, you're talking maybe a couple of 100,000. You go viral in Japan, and I think it was like 1 million views of their analysis of the match in 24 hours, something like that. So he's got a bit of history there as well, of course, going back to 2002 when he did his bow after scoring against Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? So struck up the relationship again there. They're going crazy for Duffer down there, and obviously great scenes after that win in Japan. And he's spoken as well before about how a lot of fans would come up to him when even in his Fulham days.
Yeah, I remember that.
Fans from that part of the world coming up and sort of thanking him and chatting about it. So they would appreciate that's the gesture at the time. And they appreciated them waxing lyrical about a great win, a famous win for Japan.
Alan, you know what to do now. If you want to get big in Japan, do you have you got a few nice words for their team?
Yeah, I'm a bit behind Duffer now, I'd say, in those stakes, to be honest with you, Raf. But look, he's such an iconic figure. Sometimes I wonder as well, because we're very humble in our nature and kind of the way we go about things, and particularly the likes of Damien and I was fortunate enough to work with Robbie Keane at Leeds and players like this. And we work with Kenny Cunningham, obviously, on the telly. Captained this country, so many caps, a brilliant career. But the lads are the nicest lads you'll ever meet, and so humble and just humility to bring. And it's almost like an Irish trait, Raf. I think you look at Shane Lowry in the golf as well, something similar. Paul Carrington. I know the Westlife lads, the singers as well, great lads and all. And I think it's probably it's in our culture that I suppose your mates or people from where you're from don't let you get too big for your boots, that kind of thing, and they'll drag you right back down to earth the minute you think you're too big for your boots. So I think that's something we see with a lot of the lads, but certainly Damien. I've so much respect for him. He was one of my heroes when I was growing up as well. I remember when he first started doing the punditry, and he wouldn't have known me at the time, and I was working on the radio, and he came over to do a little segment on the radio before he was doing his TV work, and he walked in to the studio, and I remember kind of going to shake his hand and thinking it was the first time I'd been a little bit shell-shocked, almost starstruck. And I was just looking at him thinking, like, what an unbelievable player. And he just said a couple of nice things, and you're thinking, wow, like, it's amazing. So to see him on the telly now and all, it's great. And as you say, that story going viral in Japan, there'll probably be another couple before the end of the tournament as well, especially if they get through the next round, Raf.
Yeah, and just as you were talking there, Anthony, we've just had a goal for Australia there, so it's getting a little bit interesting.
Sorry, yeah, this is a bit of a live watch party here. I've missed the goal. I do have the game in front of me. I'm just waiting on the replay, so I haven't seen any of that, Raf.
It deflected in. I think it was looked like Craig Goodwin, who would have scored in the opening game. Took a shot from distance, went off the back of an Argentinian defender and went in. But we've tried to time this with the hope that extra time doesn't happen. So I'm getting a little bit nervous now.
Well, there's a similar vibe to the game earlier, the USA Netherlands game, which I was doing the live blog for that, and it just was tracking saying this game is over, 2-0, this is done and dusted. They're just, the Dutch are just seeing this out, and then they nicked the goal back. Bit of a mad goal, looped in off. God, I actually can't remember the goal scorer's name now. Looped off his heel.
Haji Wright.
Haji Wright, and he actually caused chaos when he came on off the bench, and all of a sudden. They had a couple of half chances. They had a couple of moments where they could have nicked the second goal and taken it to extra time before the Dutch killed it off. So, I'm not. Who knows? Like, stranger things have happened. But if Argentina allowed this game to go to extra time, we were saying just before we started recording, Alan was saying there how sort of average Australia are. For them to get to this stage is a great success. So, that's 12 minutes to go plus about 20 minutes of injury time, so you never know. But probably more likely that Argentina find another goal, I think.
Yeah, we'll keep a very close eye on that. But you mentioned the Netherlands beating USA 3-1, and they only had 42% possession during the game. Alan, what did you make of their performance? I know possession isn't everything, but the US really, the US really did give them a bit of a test in certain passages of play.
Yeah, it's certainly not everything in this tournament, Raf. We've seen so many examples of that where teams have had lesser amount of possession, but they've got the result. And that's all that matters, really, is the scoreline at the end of the day. That's the only stat that really matters. But in terms of their performance today, I've been disappointed with them up to now in the tournament. I think they were a little bit better today. You're looking as if something's after happening there, Raf. Sorry.
Yeah, Anthony, are you looking at that? Somebody almost did a bit of a Maradona run the whole way through the Argentinian defence.
I think you're ahead of me, lads.
Yeah, I'm just behind. I'm just looking at it now. Wow. Oh.
It looks like Behic just went on a mazy run.
Oh my God, what a run. Incredible. Brilliant tackle at the end, but what a run. He must have went by 4 or 5 of them. Here he is, Behic goes by 2 there, cuts inside. And it was Lisandro Martinez with an unbelievable tackle. He's even celebrating the tackle. That's how good it was. But yeah, they've made it nervy for themselves now. As Anthony said just before we came on air there, Raf, this game was done and dusted. The 2-0 scoreline. Australia hadn't had a shot on target. They never even looked like getting a shot on target. They lack so much quality. I think it's just their defensive discipline and organisation that has probably gotten them this far in their fight and their spirit. Oh, there's another shot as well, just goes over. But I think that's what's kind of gotten them this far, and it's an achievement just to get this far. But now that it's gone 2-1, they're pushing on and they believe they could maybe get something out of the game, and all of a sudden they've made it very nervy for themselves. I haven't been impressed with Argentina at all in the games, bar Messi, and without him, I think they'd be very, very ordinary, Raf, to be honest. And I don't see them. I know all the hype before the tournament, 36 games unbeaten, but from the evidence, what I've seen so far in the tournament, and I was so looking forward to them in the tournament as well, and the romance in me wants to see Messi win it, but I've been so disappointed with them in their performances, and I say without him, they'd be very, very ordinary.
Yeah, and just on the Dutch, I think we were obviously interrupted by the great moment of magic there by Behic. But yeah, again, 3-1 win for them. But they haven't. Have you been? As you say, you're not convinced by Argentina's performances. How convinced or otherwise are you by what you've seen of the Dutch, especially today?
Yeah, no, I wasn't convinced by them either in the group stages, Raf, but they came through quite comfortably. And again, something like Argentina, maybe to a lesser extent, but there was a lot of hype around them as well in terms of their qualification campaign, the amount of goals they were scoring. I covered a couple of their matches in the group stage, and as I say, they were pretty underwhelming. Now, the big thing for them, and obviously evidence today when we see it, is they got Memphis Depay some really important minutes in the group stage. And if they get him in the team, obviously they have a chance because he has such a brilliant goal scoring record at international level. And we've seen that with the first goal. I actually thought the first goal was one of the best goals I've seen in the tournament. It was a brilliant team move. And obviously he started the attack on the half line, carried on his run, but there was a couple of lovely passes out to the right-hand side. And I think it was Dumfries pulled it back to him as well with a brilliant pass and a brilliant finish. So I think with him in the team, obviously he gives them a lot more attack and impetus and much more of a goal threat. But again, in terms of winning out the tournament, I think they face each other now in the next round. If Argentina go through here, it's a tough one to call, but I think they're evenly matched. And I would just edge it purely because of Messi. But I haven't been impressed by any of those two teams, Raf.
Yeah, and you mentioned Memphis there. So, of course, as you said, he scored. He was at the end of a very good team move. Their drop off in the second half when the US got at them, he seemed to be at fault for there was the chance for Haji Wright where the ball he played a back pass short, sort of reminiscent of Steven Gerrard against France at Euro 2004 where he put Thierry Henry through and ended up being a penalty, and then he gave the ball away again for when in the build up to the move when Haji Wright scored. So he seems to be a little bit loose, and I don't know whether you think it's an issue to do with fitness.
Yeah, a little bit loose in the passes there, as you say. Sometimes what tends to happen there, it becomes too easy. And a 2-0, I think they were probably in kind of cruise control, and then it only takes one lapse in concentration with a sloppy back pass. And even Anthony mentioned him, that lad Wright. When he came on, he did cause all sorts of problems. But on that one, I actually felt he should have done better, Raf, because he took a really heavy touch around the goalkeeper and made it difficult for himself with the angle. And I think it was Van Dijk got back on the line. But no, I do think with Memphis, they're obviously much more of a goal threat. But USA, as you says, gave them a right match today, and only for USA have very little up front in terms of real quality, because the amount of chances they created and the amount of situations they had in around the Dutch box, they would have scored had somebody up there more clinical. Obviously, they had Pulisic, who I felt played very well for them, but he's more a creator of goals than actually scoring the goals. And I just think they lacked a real clinical number 9. And had they have had that, I think they would have possibly beaten the Dutch today. But the game through, I think Marco van Basten was highly critical. I was reading an article online earlier, and he was slating the performance from the Dutch. So it just goes to show maybe what they're thinking back home, because we all kind of know that the Dutch are, I suppose, remembered for their glory days in terms of their attacking football. And I just don't think we'll get that with Louis van Gaal. He's much more functional, much more conservative in his approach. And all he's worried about is obviously the results and getting through. And who can argue with them sitting there in the quarterfinal?
Yeah, he would have been an advocate, like pretty much any Dutch coach would have been 4-3-3. But as we saw the last World Cup that he managed them at in 2014, and this one obviously he sees the back three as the way forward. He did say, now I think he probably wouldn't go as far as Van Basten in terms of criticising his own team, but he wasn't too happy with their performance once they went 2-0 up, as you alluded to there. But he was very full of praise of Denzel Dumfries, and what he said after the game was, yesterday or the day before yesterday, I gave him a big fat kiss, and I'm going to give him another big fat kiss. So Denzel Dumfries is warned if he needs to hide in his hotel room to get away from him. But either way, Dumfries set up both the Depay goal and then Daley blinked and then scored unmarked at the back post, the third goal. What did you make of his performance overall?
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic, Raf. And as you say, sure, anyone that sets up 2 goals and scores one himself, it's obviously he's not doing much wrong, to be fair, in the game. But I suppose we often see that in the modern game now in terms of the fullbacks and how important they are, and particularly him. We saw him in the Euros as well. He had a brilliant European Championships, and he's just such a brilliant player, Dumfries, getting forward, loves to attack. And we see it at club level as well. And I think, to be fair, the first goal in particular, because it was a real pick out for Memphis Depay on the edge of the box. A lot of times people get into, and you hear it in commentary or in analysis of games about people's final ball or final delivery into the box. It was a brilliant ball and a brilliant pullback from him and Dumfries, and totally aware of the situation and where Memphis Depay was. And he's a brilliant player. I'm not sure he'll want the kisses from Van Gaal, but if he keeps playing like that, I'm sure that they'll be all happy with him in the Netherlands, because he's a fine player.
Yeah, and Anthony, from the United States point of view, obviously the next World Cup we'll see them at is when they're co-hosting the 2026 tournament, and almost a chance there for Argentina. But they're still a very young side, clearly. I mean, even the star players like Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, the entire spine of the team. For them, clearly, they do need to identify a centre forward.
Yeah, but it's been a good tournament for them, Raf. I really liked watching them. I thought they were very good against England. And I thought in parts today, they impressed. I mean, they had a bad chunk of the game after they conceded. It could have been 1-0 up after 2 minutes. Pulisic had a good chance after that. If they take the lead in that game, I mean, it's slightly obvious, but it's a very, very different proposition. Like, there's shades of England about the Dutch, just in the sense that they are, the criticism for Van Gaal is that they are conservative, given that they have some really technically excellent players. So even though for a lot of the game, they were kind of playing a controlled, pretty dour game, like they got themselves in the lead and they just sort of put a lid on the match. Sorry, Raf, you're reacting there. You can jump in any time you want there, Raf.
No, it was a great run by Messi. Frees Lautaro Martinez in the box, and he just skies it. But yeah, go on. We'll talk about Argentina shortly.
Yeah, but as Alan referenced the first goal, like there's every so often there's little flashes of great play. Like they have got class and quality within them. But it's not always a great watch. And the thing about the States is that, like there was just like parts of the game where they started to believe themselves in that last 15 minutes in particular. You could see like they've got loads of energy. They have good players. Like Pulisic is only 24, which really surprised me. I was only reading that earlier today. It feels like he's older because he's been on the scene for a long time. He was carrying a bit of a knock, I think, coming into today as well. So. Like they've definitely got, there's a lot of potential in that team. There's a lot of potential in that USA team. It'll be interesting to see how they develop come the next World Cup, because a lot of the names that you referenced there, they're still going to be there and they're going to be entering their prime then. So no shame in them going out. I sort of fancy the Dutch to beat Argentina if Argentina see this out. I would fancy them because I just think I think they're slightly better balanced, albeit they are a bit dour. Like they'd like them to be a bit more ambitious. But I don't know. Like there's flaws in everyone, Raf. I have a feeling for England at the minute, I have to say, and England aren't without their flaws. But I just have a feeling that it's that type of team that seems to have conviction in what they're doing, and the fact that they've had two good tournaments coming into this. They seem to trust and like Southgate. They've got a deep squad, a good squad. I've got a feeling that they're going to go very close this year. I'd say that there's no team, maybe France, but I don't think there's one outstanding team that you could really put your house on. Now, I don't know how you lads feel. I think we go around, it wouldn't surprise me if we go around the houses and we all pick a different team here. Like it feels very open.
Yeah, let's touch on England actually, because they're playing Senegal tomorrow on Sunday. That is 7 o'clock kickoff live on RT2 and the RT Player. They're going to be favourites going into this, but as we've seen often with Southgate's teams in major tournaments, they go far. But Alan, it's one of those things, you don't necessarily need to play well, as in flowing football, to do well at these tournaments. I think you can name all the World Cup winners from the last number of editions of the tournament, and when you actually look at their results, they rarely ever blew other teams away.
Yeah, and I think with England, I would agree with Anthony to an extent, certainly about them. The only problem for England is that they're going to face France in the quarter-final, and I think that's a serious opposition for them. Whereas if they were on maybe a different side of the draw, and we see Argentina are going to face the Netherlands in the quarter-final possibly, if that was England in that situation, I would fancy them to beat both of those teams and maybe get themselves to a semi-final, and who knows after that. So I just think the way it's panned out for them, it's going to be difficult, because I think out of all the teams we've seen so far, and again, I'd agree with Anthony that there's flaws in them all. We've seen that in every game. There's no real standout team, but I just think France with Mbappe, he's the standout player of the tournament. I just think he's absolutely sensational at the moment. And in terms of the talent that he has, the ability that he has, all the talk, I suppose, is Messi and Ronaldo, but certainly in terms of the next player that's going to take over that mantle, I think he's head and shoulders above anyone, Mbappe, and he's already done it in the tournament, and he's done it in a couple of major tournaments already for one so young. So I just think that's going to be a major hurdle for England to get across. If they were to get across that, well, then you give them every chance. And that's not to say they can't beat France either. I think that'll be a serious game between both teams, and one I'd be certainly looking forward to. I think they'll beat Senegal tomorrow. I covered Senegal in two of the games, and I can't believe Senegal have gotten through. I thought they were absolutely dreadful, to be honest with you. Ecuador were the team for me in that group who were absolutely brilliant, and unfortunately for them, they went into the final game against Senegal on 4 points with Senegal on 3, and it was almost as if the occasion, they just thought we'll just play for a draw, and ended up getting caught out. So that was a major disappointment for them, because I thought they were really, really good in the group. And if you think back to their game against the Netherlands, they absolutely destroyed them, and they should have won that match as well. So Senegal, I think England will take care of, no problem. But then to face France, and as I said, that could have been a final, that game, because those two teams are very, very strong. Whereas I look at Argentina and the Netherlands in the quarter final, and I can't see any of them going on to win the tournament. So that's probably how I would split up that side of the draw with those four teams.
Yeah, in regard to tomorrow, so Senegal are going to be without Idrissa Gana Gueye, probably arguably their key midfielder, suspended, and but from the English point of view, they've obviously stuck with the back four so far. But do you envisage any changes? And also, Alan, do you see Foden and Rashford having done enough to take the place of either Saka or Sterling in the starting lineup?
Yeah, 100%, Raf. That's the criticism of Southgate, is that he's too conservative. But I think what we've seen in the group games already, you can get by with the back four against the teams that he's played, and he'll have no problem getting by with the teams that he played. So I don't think there was too many questions asked of him. Although the fact that he did pick the four, but I think, and it remains to be seen, as I say, when he gets down to the latter stages against the France, I think he'll revert to type and go back to a back three. I have a major issue with him picking Harry Maguire. I think it's admirable in one sense that he's very loyal to the players that have done very well for him. But sometimes there can be blind loyalty as well, Raf. And I think that could be the case for the likes of Maguire if he plays him against the likes of an Mbappe or some of the top centre forwards that we may see come the latter stages of the tournament. So I think that will be an issue for them. But I think with Senegal tomorrow, he'll stick with the back four because he'll take care of them, no problem. And they still should have 70% of the ball, you would think, and dominate possession for large spells. On the Foden and Rashford one, I think he'll stick with them as well. They played really, really well in the last game. Obviously, Rashford getting a couple of goals, Foden as well chipping in. I think Foden should be in the team anyway, Raf. I can't believe that there's a debate around him. For me, he's a given. He's absolutely sensational, Foden. I know people might argue, and even to go back to the point about Southgate being loyal to the ones that have done it for him in England jersey, you could argue Foden, we've only seen it in a Man City jersey, I suppose. But he's a sensational talent and he has to be in the team. So I think he'll stick in the team. I think Rashford will as well. And rightly so as well. The old kind of adage goes, Raf, if you get the jersey and you do the business, you hold on to the jersey, and not much changes there, no matter how much the game evolves. I'd still be very much old school in that regard, that if you do the business, you hold on to the jersey to the next day. And I think that's what we'll see with Foden and Rashford.
Yeah, and Senegal in their last 10 World Cup matches haven't kept a clean sheet, so it doesn't bode well for tomorrow. And obviously in these, as we see in these games, it's often there's only a goal or two in it. And you've mentioned France and Mbappe already. Now they're playing Poland on, they're playing Poland in the 3 o'clock game, again, live on RT2 and the RT player. Anthony, these are two teams that haven't played each other for 11 years. But if you look at the way Poland played against Argentina, I mean, they were very, very passive. So, and again, France probably have more tools in their arsenal going forward. So this is going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah, well, they have to try and score. Like that's the first big thing for them, and they just look surprisingly toothless, you know, given that Lewandowski is still on that side. But passive is correct. I mean, it's very difficult to see anything but a fairly straightforward French win. And you know, look, these tournaments, any major tournament, like once you get to the last day, I mean, it's all shaping up to be last day because it's very open, but only once we get beyond this last 16 stage. There's a few games there that we're already talking in terms of, you know, France v England and those matchups later in the competition. And you know, that's where you really see what these teams are made of, and the likes of England, you know, if they have learned maybe past lessons from the Euros. Sorry, Raf, I'm fixated on your expression watching the Argentina game, because it feels like you're going to throw a little leg twist at me or something.
My expression, is it?
Yeah.
I just have one of those faces. But no, realistically, something did happen as well. It was Garang Kual, the young kind of winger who plays his club football in Australia, but is heading to Newcastle in January. Almost put the ball past Martinez in the Argentinian goal, and it's just coming to the very end of stoppage time. They've made it very hard for themselves. But
it's funny, you know, looking at games like this, and you wonder, like, is the likes of an Argentina, would they nearly prefer just to get like one of the bigger teams in a game, as opposed to a game like this where there's so much pressure on them just to win and get through? Would it potentially liberate a team like Argentina to take a swing at one of the bigger sides? I don't know. Like, is it too? Am I simplifying it there, Alan?
I think you're right, Anthony, because and I'm nearly at the stage now as well. And I don't want to be disrespectful to these teams, because I think that's what's made the group stage, is the surprise packages and the unknowns and the romance of the results as well. But I'm at the stage now where I want to see the big boys go at it. And I don't like I'm watching Australia there tonight, and no disrespect to them, like they're hanging in on pure grit and fight and determination. And there's a lot to be said for those qualities. Absolutely 100%. There's so much to be said for those qualities. But I just think when you get to the business end, you want to see Brazil, France, England, Spain, Netherlands, Germany, whoever it may be, go at it toe to toe. And I just think in the quarter final, I think that's what will separate these kind of surprise results. You'd see, we've already seen one today, USA, who were a bit of a surprise package, but did do very well. Potentially a banana skin for the Netherlands, and I felt it was a banana skin, a major one. I didn't think this was as much of one tonight, Australia and Argentina. But I'm glad the Netherlands have come through. I'm glad Argentina have come through. And hopefully when we do get down to that final eight, as you say, the big boys are swinging at each other, and let's separate the men from the boys at that stage, because you do want to see the cream rise to the top in terms of the quality. And I think that's what we'll see once we get down to those last eight. And it's almost like the tournament is split in two, because for those group stages, all the story has been for the last 2 weeks of all Japan, Senegal, Ecuador, Australia, whatever the case may be, and those surprise results. Whereas now, as I say, we're into the business end this next 2 weeks, and you want to see the big boys, I think, take each other on and see the quality come out on top.
Yeah, and in terms of the cream rising to top, obviously France reigning champions. Do you see is there any hope for Poland there from what you've seen of them that they can cause a bit of a shock?
No, I think it'll be a tricky game and it'll be a good test for France, but I can't see it, Raf. No, I really can't. Obviously, Lewandowski, as we know, is a serious talent, but bar him, like, you're kind of looking around and thinking, where else can they trouble the French? And I just think with the attacking options that France have, and I mentioned that man Mbappe as well, he looks like he's come to this tournament thinking this is my time, even though you probably thought that 4 years ago or 2 years ago or whatever. But I just think he's at that age now where he's maturing with every match and every game, and he almost senses as though he's taken on the mantle from the two greats that are currently in that position. So I can't see them troubling France. No, I think France will win tomorrow, and I think England will tomorrow, Raf.
Yeah, and as we can see on the screen there, well, on my screen here, the Argentinians celebrating that very narrow 2-1 win over Australia. So your overall take on this game, maybe first on Messi. He's now actually scored more World Cup goals than Diego Maradona. He's up to 9, just one off Gabriel Batistuta's all-time record for an Argentinian at the tournament. It seems like anything good seems to just go through him.
Oh, he's incredible, Raf. Like, the stat obviously before the match was that it was his 1,000th game, like 1,000 games. It's absolutely frightening. Even if you try and just even comprehend that in terms of the longevity and the amount of games in a season and how many you'd have to play each year to get up to 1,000. Like, it's bamboozling really when you start trying to dip into the figures. But for 1,000 games, and then you throw in the goals on top of that, I think it's 789. Would I be right that it's in and around that? So it's just absolutely incredible. And he's my number one. I absolutely love him, Raf. I don't think there's a debate. I don't even think there's a discussion anymore. And that's kind of a big statement when you think of how good Ronaldo has been as well in his numbers. But I just think this fella is just absolutely phenomenal and keeps doing it. And even when the game was very much in the balance in that first kind of 20 minutes, half an hour, when there wasn't much happening, Australia were comfortable, probably thinking this is going okay for us. We're defending quite well. They haven't really troubled the goalkeeper. Bang, just one injection of a pass out to the edge of the box, goes for the return, falls kindly to him, takes a first touch and just bends it into that far corner like we've seen him do on 788 occasions before this. So he's just phenomenal, Raf. And he's the reason I think that they can go far, because, as I said to one of the boys earlier on, he's capable of everything, not just anything. You know, it's just incredible what he's done over the years. And for that reason alone, you have to still have them in as contenders. Also, even just looking at the scenes here, with another factor that's in their favour as well, I think, which might carry them forward. And I mentioned about Australia probably just relying on pure grit and determination, but Argentina have the fans and the support as well, Raf, and that can carry us so far. Especially, you look at the grounds and everywhere they played, you look at the connection with Messi at the moment and him, you even look at the scenes there, they're all down in front of, behind the goal where the fans are, and the players are all down gesturing to them and receiving the ovations from them. And I think that could carry them far as well, because the phenomenal support over there. And when you build up that momentum as well in a tournament, it's kind of hard to stop that. So they're the two main reasons why I still see them as contenders. But on their overall general play, if you were to take Messi out of it, I think they're fairly ordinary after that, to be honest with you. Good players, obviously, but I don't see them as being as good as a Brazil or a France if you take Messi out of the team.
Yeah, because it was just something Ray Houghton said on the co-commentary there to George Hamilton, and he sort of rhetorically asked the question, like, what would Argentina be without him? And Anthony, what do you make of the supporting cast?
Well, just to add to the Messi point on the amount of games he's played, because like Alan, I'd say, experienced this when he was, as a player at some point, whether he was a kid or just coming through, where you would have been the best player on a team. Experiencing what it's like to be the best player in the team, and what it's like for opposition teams to identify that and to pay special attention to him, mark him, don't let him do this. Okay, so there's a pressure mentally on that as a player when you get that, all the time you're marked out. So imagine what it's like for Messi. Like, every game he's played, like you're talking about elite. Like, Australia are not pub team. Like, these are, we're in the World Cup here. These are elite athletes. Every game he plays, whether it's against Liverpool, Australia, whoever, Leon, the opposition players are like, this is a chance for me to try and tackle Mark Messi out of the game. Like the pressure that comes with that. Like, there was a stat earlier on in the competition where after 2 games he had walked more than any other player. Like he's just walking around the pitch. So like he's now just distilled his game into picking the killer moments. He's walking around the pitch, but he's watching everything. His head is on a swivel. So he's just constantly identifying the patterns of play. Where's that right back going? Where can I get the ball here? And when it comes to him, he just kills you. Absolutely unbelievable. There are some good players like McAllister. It was a nice package on McAllister, wasn't there, before the game in RTE, tracking his routes back to Donabate in North County Dublin. They've got a few decent players around them. Like Eamon Dunphy had a piece last week or earlier this week, I think, talking about the Argentina team at Italia 90, and how Maradona carried that team to the final. Now that was an average Argentina team. It was like, I would say that this Argentina team are stronger than that Argentina team. But it's still going to be a big ask for Messi. As brilliant.
Even that point, that it's a great point to make about bringing up the walking stuff, because I see people kind of labouring this point and honing in on it. But when you're as good as him, right? Any ordinary player or any run-of-the-mill player or even any Premier League player, say, and you see a player walking, straight away it's a criticism. You're like, hold on, what's going on here? Like, this lad's walking, he's not running, he's not trying, he's not doing. But as you say, he's walking because he's holding on to the energy and he's, as you say, picking the moments. It's not like he's walking because he's being lazy or because he's kind of thinking, I don't care here, or there's method in what he's trying to do here, So and he almost the beauty and the greatness of him. I think the players around him, and you have to give them credit for that, because they obviously factor that in as well in terms of the work rate that they're putting in, which you would totally allow for if you were playing in a team with Lionel Messi. I've played in small, little, lesser teams, and you'd have a manager saying, look, you'll have fellas doing the work and you'll have the 1 or 2 fellas who might win us the match. If you're playing in a team with him, those players will do anything if it allows him what's 1 split second of space that he needs to obviously hurt the opposition, like we've seen tonight, and that's all you need. So a lot of people are honing in on that, and it's purely down to obviously the age he's at. He just can't run around the pitch like he used to. But that should never be aimed at him as a criticism, because he is so good that it still only takes that 1 split second, and all it is a touch, a clever pass, a swivel of the hips, bang, and it's a goal. And I've noticed a lot of that maybe in the last probably 6 to 9 months, people really labouring that point. Oh, well, he walks around the pitch, he ambles around. But it's a great point that you raised, that he's doing it for a reason. He's not doing it because he doesn't care. It's just the greatness of the man that time catches up on everybody. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for us, it's catching up on him now. We won't get to see him for another 5, 6, 7 years. But for those next 3 or 4 games or 3 or 4 months that he is left, or whatever the case may be, he has to hold on to every little sinew that he has for those little moments where he injects a little bit of pace into it and bang.
Yeah,
as well. Sorry, Raf, but just like we all want to see him do what he used to do. Like, you got really excited earlier when he went on a run, because it's like, everybody wants to see him in full flow. It's thrilling to watch him do that. But I guess there's a couple of things. First of all, you have to understand the amount of punishment he's taken. Like, even in this day and age, I know the game's not as physical, but he's still taking a lot of punishment for many, many years, like running down channels and taking off fullbacks and being a marked man game after game. The other thing that him walking around the pitch does is that if you're marking him, it must be hard to actually stay tuned in if the guy the main danger man is just walking on. Like, if he's running, and trying to get away from you, that automatically tunes you into the match. Like, it helps you stay focused on the game, because you have to follow him, you can't switch off. When he's just walking and then bang, he's gone. Like, that's much harder over the course of an hour and a half of football. It just takes, you don't know when he's going to do it. He obviously disinterested, he's not in the game, and then bang. And that's what happened today with that goal. It was just flick of the switch, 1-0. There you go.
Yeah. It's phenomenal, it really is. And I think that's what separates him off. People love to have the debate around Ronaldo and Messi and all that, but he's at a stage in his career where Ronaldo had the tricks and the jinky winger type when he was there, and then obviously he's become the great goal scorer. But Ronaldo wouldn't be able to drop into midfield and pick passes and do the things that he has, like the all-round footballing ability of almost like a creative midfielder as well. He could drop back and play as a deep lying midfielder and just pass the ball all day and cruise around, no problem. Like, so it's almost like And that's not to take away Ronaldo, as we know, look, is a freak of nature in terms of what he's achieved as well. And people argue, oh, well, it's left foot, right foot, he heads the ball, he's brilliant in the air. But Ronaldo wouldn't do what Messi does now. Not a hope in hell in terms of the amount of goals that he scored, Messi, but I'd say the amount of chances he's created as well out of pure brilliance in terms of the awareness and the passing range that he has as well. So for me, there's no debate. I'm holding on to every little moment that we still see him do the things he's done tonight, and that's why I want to see Argentina. I nearly want to be impressed by him, Anthony, but I have to be honest and say I'm not impressed by him. But just purely for him, I just want him to go far, and I'd love to see him bow out winning because that silly kind of criticism, not silly, but that stick that they used to beat him. Well, Maradona did it, and he didn't do it. And I loved Maradona as well, but I just think it's not a stick to be beating this fella with when you consider all he's done.
Yeah, on the walking point, I think I remember Robbie Keane sort of after he'd retired, kind of talking about how he'd actually looked at Messi and the way he walked around as a kind of sign of genius that he even, in his own latter end of his own career, he kind of used as well. And I think just on the point of Messi dropping deep, I think the greatest compliment to him probably is he's arguably one of the greatest playmakers we've ever seen, and at the same time, and often within the same game, the greatest goal scorer. So it's sort of like the NFL thing of he's almost the quarterback and also the sort of wide receiver in one role. But before we go, of course, Messi and Argentina are going to be playing the Dutch in the quarterfinals. I think Anthony's already said he kind of fancies the Dutch a little bit in that matchup. But Alan, in regards to how the Dutch set up, obviously they play with this back three. They can be a little bit passive, although they're quite good and they're quite balanced, as we saw in passages against the USA in terms of blocking off passing lanes. But is the best way to confront Argentina actually just to either sit back, or do you do sort of what Saudi Arabia did, where you actually try and press high on them?
I think for the Netherlands, I think because they're built on that solid foundation at the back with the three and Van Dijk, I think Van Dijk has been very, very good in the tournament as well. A lot of people kind of were questioning where his head was at in terms of the Liverpool situation, and we haven't seen him at the heights that we've seen him over the last maybe 18 months, 2 years. But I think he's been very, very good for them in that back three, Nathan Ake as well. And that's where their strength is, to be fair, even though Memphis Depay has an amazing goal scoring record at international level. And obviously there's a lot of hype around Cody Gakpo as well. But I've been disappointed with Gakpo in the games. I know he has 3 goals. That might sound like a silly statement, but in the games and in general play, he's done very, very little. And I know as a goal scorer, you're there to score the goals, but he's done very, very little. And again today, I don't think he had a huge impact on the match. But so that's where their strength is, in that kind of defensive setup and that shape with the back three. Dumfries getting up the wing, Daley Blind loves to join in. We've seen him score a goal today. I think they're fairly solid in midfield as well with De Jong. And they look to hit Argentina maybe on the counter attack, as I say, with something like what we've seen in that first goal today with Depay. So I think that's the approach they'll take. They'll be happy to sit in maybe, because I think with Argentina as well, the criticism when I'm watching them, they're so pedestrian in their play. Everything's in front of you. And if it's all in front of you and you've no runners in behind, I think that's why we've probably seen the inclusion of Alvarez, because he gives them that maybe little bit of a tread in behind. He's willing to run in behind. Whereas other than that, Di Maria, when he was playing, obviously Messi sits deep now. Even Lautaro Martinez, kind of something similar, just wants to play in the shoulder. So I think from the Netherlands' point of view, that's the approach to take and try and hit them on the counter-attack. And it's a tough one to call. It really is, Raf. You'd nearly be siding, as Anthony says, with the Netherlands, but just purely because of Messi, I want to see them go through rather than the Netherlands. So I'm just going to go purely for that reason.
Okay, we'll see how far they get on. Obviously, they're both on the Brazilian side of the draw as well, and we'd expect Brazil to go far too. But anyway, before we go, tomorrow, as I said, RT2 and the RT player, 3 o'clock first, France against Poland, and then it's England against Senegal at 7 o'clock. Alan Cawley, thanks a mil for taking the time, and Anthony Pyne as well.
Pleasure, lads.